So if you want to type a question or start a conversation in the chat, I'll try to keep an eye on it and pick up any questions. And you're welcome to have conversations among yourself about what I'm talking about or about anything in the chat while this is going on. So hacks, 15 hacks. I don't actually know. I can't count very well, so I'm not sure how many hacks I'm showing you, but I'm going to show you some tips about how to improve communications, some at the macro level and some at the micro level. So let me start out by quoting a couple of legendary figures in fundraising communications and fundraising. Penelope Burke, who's been an AFP keynote speaker in the past and does donor research with her organization, comes out with interesting research every year. Failure to communicate communicating is a key to repeating and increasing giving. And Roger Craver, let's ignore whether it's a 4-page newsletter or not. Roger Craver is making the point that conveying stories is essential to communicating how donors' money was used and the vitality of your organization's mission. So things I'm going to talk about are kind of directed in that way: how to communicate more, how to get your story heard a little bit better. Yes, you should keep communicating. Here's the 5 things I want to talk about. 1, double your impact emails, make phone calls, ask more frequently, be readable. And finally, what's the message now in spring of 2021? Let's start with double impact emails. I bring this up because I think in my conversations with dozens of nonprofits every year, the biggest missed opportunity in communications is getting out frequent donor emails, about donor-centric emails, talking about what their money has done, what their impact has been, how much you love them, what the latest story is that has happened in your organization and with the people that you're helping. So I'd advocate for getting one out every 2 weeks. 2 obstacles to that. One is some executive directors and others feel that, wow, an email every 2 weeks, aren't we bothering our donors? Isn't that too much? And my answer to that would be, if you've been in for-profit marketing, you would think 1 email every 2 weeks is malpractice. That's not nearly enough. It should be 3 or 4 a week. Some organizations send out 5 a day. Of course, you might unsubscribe to them, but nonprofit emails or emails from nonprofits to their donors have very high opening rates, around 30–35% from what we see. That's double or triple what for-profit marketers get. That's a great opportunity for you to continuously keep yourself in front of donors, keep them, your organization, your mission, and the cause that you're serving in their top of mind. Second objective is not cultural, it's time. How do I find time to put something together? And the key to that is be less ambitious about what you put in your email. And I include social media posts in that because, of course, you want to repurpose the material across multiple channels if you can. But keep it simple. Few words, 1 photo, a testimonial. It's more important to do it than it is to put many, many hours into trying to craft the perfect email. Maybe you need to sacrifice something else that takes a lot of time. How about all the time you spend on that printed annual report, which you send out once a year and consumes a tremendous amount of dollars and time? Get that online. That'd be our advice. Second thing, make phone calls. One of the questions that we're getting from clients is, we had a lot of new donors last year. How do we get them renewed? Well, this might be a little bit after the fact, but one thing that I'm always telling organizations is the thank you call after the first gift is essential to renewing that gift. Now, you may not have phone calls for a lot of your donors. That's just part of the, the challenge that we all face. The other thing is they don't pick up the phone. You get voicemail, but a 2-minute voicemail is very valuable. It's important to have a script, but once you have a script to give that voicemail, it means that a phone call doesn't take preparation time. It only takes 2 minutes. You could do 10 of them a week. You can have a volunteer do them. It doesn't matter what staff member does it. It just matters that someone reached out. Okay, so both emails and phone calls, try to think of ways to get those. Make sure that you ask for it on reply envelopes, reply forms. Make sure that you collect them at events. Make sure that you have forms on, look for ways on the website interaction, somehow registration for, events. Make sure that you're trying to collect postal addresses, emails, and phone numbers when you can. By the way, after first-time donation, you should have an autoresponder, especially if it's an online gift, autoresponder. Second, staff members should send a personal email to each first-time donor. Third, make the phone call if you've got the phone number. And of course, immediately get out a thank you letter, not just a receipt, but something that tells them how wonderful and how much their donation is going to accomplish. Phone calls, of course, at any time can be great for donors. I'm just going to play a quick video here from Laura Gingras, VP Philanthropy, Monadnock Community Hospital, about that. Hopefully this will work out.
I find the phone calls with the new donors are great because you learn so much just by asking them about themselves and what inspired them to give. And
do you think people are more chatty right now because they're stuck at home and their social life has been curtailed?
Definitely. And they love hearing about what's happening at the hospital. They love hearing that we're not losing as much money as we thought we would be. I had one person, I called and thanked him, and he was a new donor. And he said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm going to dance around my kitchen. You guys are doing okay. That's just such great news." And oh my gosh, this really is.
That's great.
They want to hear from us now with the vaccine coming out. Potentially, they love having that connection to us.
Now, let's see, I got to get back to my presentation here. Question in the chat, are calls from board members best? The call that's best is the one that actually happens. So you might have one board member or two that you could actually rely on doing it, but it takes a little more effort to get organized that. Whereas if your annual fund manager or even your annual fund coordinator is there, if it's part of their daily assignment, to make that call just to get it from a junior staffer is as exciting for a donor as it is to get it from the CEO. Okay, ask more frequently. This is a chart for 2020 of one of our larger clients in Massachusetts. You can see they had over 6,000 donors last year. So that's not the size of most of you on this phone call. What this is I'm showing this because it gives an opportunity to look at a lot of data and see what's really going on. And here we have, yes, 4,000 donors last year made one gift. That's the bulk of the donors, but that's only 1/3 of the dollars and less than half the gifts. It turns out that getting multiple gifts from donors becomes really important from a revenue point of view. So we could see here in this particular case, in 2020, this organization actually got more money from two-time givers than they did from one-time givers. Now, I'm saying this because there's often a lot of resistance in small nonprofits, particularly of asking more than once or twice a year. Isn't that too much? we don't want to be annoying. Will donors really, isn't it a waste of money? We don't have the budget to do it. So every time you don't ask, you're not giving your donor an opportunity to express their love and support for your mission, and you're leaving money on the table. So when I say ask, in this particular case, I'm referring to a combination of direct mail and email solicitations like a little campaign. Just to illustrate the second point that I want to make about asking multiple times is donors might not find it convenient at the particular one time or 2 times a year that you ask them to give money. They're going on vacation, they have other priorities, they just gave to somebody else, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to give them more opportunities. To illustrate that point from the same organization, that's a little bit of a complicated slide, but this particular organization asked 6 times last year. That represented 56 different patterns of giving for different donors. This is showing the top 19. So we can see actually the most donors gave once to the fall and once to the holiday appeal and once to the winter appeal. Okay, so how do you know which one they prefer? They just made their own choice. But then we start to get into multiple givers, people whose different patterns of giving, this is when it was convenient. This is when it made sense for them to give. Here's 5-time givers, for 30 gifts. Point I'm making about that is if it's email, if it's direct mail, however you're asking, give more opportunities to donor to give, you will raise more money. Okay, let's get into some specific details about readability. Most donors have some vision loss. Where does that claim come from? Well, we know that, and it's been mentioned in the chat, most donors are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s. And I can tell you from personal experience, your vision goes downhill a lot when you get into your 60s until you eventually get that cataract surgery. Reading becomes a struggle. It's harder to see things. It takes more effort and concentration. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Second thing is all donors are scanners. Actually, we're all scanners. The internet has turned every one of us into a scanner because we're overwhelmed with emails and social media and text messages and everything. So we're in a hurry to get through the material. So you need to write and you need to do typography and layout in a way that makes it really easy for the readers to scan through. What kills the ability to read? A lot of heavy blocks of text. Okay, so words are really important. And I will just mention here that letters still out in, as far as fundraising, letters still outperform self-mailers or other material that looks like marketing by a wide margin. Why? People give to people. So a letter is a personal communication from another person. It's not marketing material. It's not your local grocery store or auto dealership. Okay, so what to do? First of all, big type. This is kind of shocking, what I'm showing you here. An A/B test we did for a large nonprofit in Massachusetts, different one that I was talking about earlier, just to determine, does point size actually make a difference? So we split 30,000 letters into 2 panels, one 15,000, the other 15,000, random split, so they're equal. Exact same text, exact same graphics, everything the same. The only thing was the point size. We bumped the point size up to 14 point for one of the letters. That pushed that letter to 3 pages. That letter got 20% more gifts and 20% more dollars. How can that be possible? Everybody thinks that 3-page letters are a bad idea, right? Keep your letter to 1 page. Donors don't want to spend time reading our stuff. But this isn't about how long the text was. This is about how big the text was. And that was the only difference. It raised a lot more money. Why? It's just easier for people to focus on it and see it, especially your older donors who are giving more money and who are having more struggle with reading. How old is the typical donor? 65. I'm going to skip through this. You can look at it. You've probably seen this in other places. Okay, second thing. I mentioned that letters are from one person to another. One thing that we advocate, here's a little micro thing that you can do. put a headshot of the signer next to the signature. That personalizes it, makes them real, makes it feel like somebody real is talking to you. Also, consider digitizing the PS and having it put in the letter in this way, digitally. That way you can make a personal note to every one of your donors. And we know that personal notes on letters actually improve response rate. This was another A/B test, by the way, for another large nonprofit. And the PS that wasn't typeset, but that was digitized and handwritten, outperformed by 50%. I'm not promising you to do that every time. It's just a great example of what something that's easily possible how it can make a difference. Okay, going back to scanners, it's great to have a photo of the people who are being helped in your letter or in your email. That draws the attention. So that means that the caption is an essential place to put the case for giving and the ask. If you don't have a caption that's well thought out in terms of communicating the case for giving, you're missing a key part of the writing in your letter. Enough said. Here's a different way to do it. This is like the bottom of this particular letter for community college. So here we have the photo. Actually happens to be a stock photo, not the actual person, Alex, but it looks real. And here again, we're connecting the photo to the case for giving. So this is not turning it into a marketing brochure. It's just adding a little bit of visual element to the communication. Same with numbers and figures. Don't put a lot of numbers in the text. There's even been an academic study that shows when you combine mission statements and numbers in the letter, it reduces giving. Pull numbers out onto the reply form at the end of the letter, put them into infographics, simple little infographics, which are much easier to read. Do the same in your newsletters or in your emails. Finally, headlines. Again, scanners. What do people read that get your newsletter, that look at the communications you're putting out? They read the headlines. They may not read the article. They might intend to read the article. They might pick it up and hold it for 20 seconds and just read the headlines. So the headlines have to be about the donor, not about your organization, which leads me to, I'll skip that one for a second, the U test. Count how many times you, yours appears in your communications versus I, we, ours, us. You want it to be about them. So here's an example of some text, draft text we got from an organization. And when we counted, how many times does it talk about them versus how many times does it talk about you? 31 times we, are, us, 3 times you. That's wrong. Because remember, the donor is interested in doing something for the person that your organization is helping, not for you. So have it be about the relationship between the donor and you. Okay, just going back to this question of like, what's going on right now? I mean, how should in this stage of the crisis for the economy as well as the pandemic, how should we change our messaging? And I would advocate for, just like in the fall, still in the spring, life is far from normal. We're not in the same crisis that we were in New England 12 months ago, but we still should acknowledge life is not normal. We still need your help. And the key point here is, here's the story. Tell stories, tell stories, tell stories to illustrate what's going on. And I think you're going to get a lot of help about that from the next 2 speakers. Let's see, there was, would 2019 have looked similar with a similar number of appeals? Just going back to that chart of patterns of giving, was a little more front-loaded towards the spring than normal because there was so much additional giving in the spring. Although I will say that Blackbaud has some figures out that showed that most nonprofit segments didn't do as well last year as they did in 2020. That's not true for the organizations that kept asking. I think a lot of organizations became afraid of asking in the spring and didn't realize that donors are going to be more generous. Okay, so there's my tips, and ready to turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you.